This is my Dharma talk on mindfulness, based on chapters 18 and 19 in the Old Path White Clouds book that we've been going through. Before I start, I had a question regarding meditation versus mindfulness. And actually, I think June posed the question to me. So meditation would usually happen on a cushion when we close our eyes and we come back to ourselves. But we can also meditate in other places when we're sitting on a bus, a train, a streetcar, or sitting wherever we are, right? We can just close our eyes and we come back to ourselves. Just don't miss your stop. So you can even do meditation standing up while standing in line. I've actually done that. And why do we meditate? We meditate to become more mindful. So our goal is to become mindful in every waking moment. And if we could be mindful while we were sleeping, I could stop my snoring, which my wife complains about from time to time, but I don't think you can do that. So, but we want to be mindful of what we think, what we say, and what we do. But before all of that, we want to be mindful of our view of the world, our opinions, our perceptions. So we should always be open to changing them and seeking out information that could help us to do that. So really you want to be curious and you want to be open to change. And most importantly, we want to be mindful of the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, the ones that we have learned in our past sessions and the ones to come, including this one. So if you didn't meditate at all, and I'm thinking of you, June, but you were mindful in every waking moment, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, that you're not actually meditating, but you're still mindful. So, but that doesn't mean you know how to concentrate. So unless we can concentrate, we're not able to focus on something that we're trying to understand, or we have a problem that we're trying to solve. So you really want to work on your ability not just to be mindful, but also to concentrate. And that's how we attain insight. So that's my my next slide. Remember the sequence, or the chain of you practice mindfulness, and then you practice concentration, and then that is how you attain insight. So, okay, so I'm going to go into Old Path White Clouds. And what I've done with this presentation is I've highlighted quotations that seemed the most important to me in regards to teaching the Dharma of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha. So in this chapter, or I think the one preceding it, Siddhartha actually attains enlightenment. The chapter is entitled "The Morning Star Has Risen," and Siddhartha attains enlightenment and discovers what he calls the Great Way. And he does this through his practice of mindfulness and concentration. His practice of mindfulness had enabled him to build great powers of concentration, which he could now use to shine awareness on his mind and body. He saw that living beings suffer because they do not understand that they share one common ground with all beings. Greed, anger, arrogance, doubt, jealousy, and fear all have their roots in ignorance. The one common ground is, of course, the earth, which also includes the atmosphere that surrounds it. And I could talk about climate change, but I won't. But all of our suffering has roots in ignorance. So Gautama now saw that understanding and love are one. Without understanding, there can be no love. Each person's disposition is the result of physical, emotional, and social conditions. We could also add, I think, mental and spiritual conditions to this list, but everything is really interconnected anyway. So we talk about mind and body becoming one. So it really is interconnected. So if you're not feeling well mentally, then it affects your body, and if you're not feeling well physically, then it affects your mind. So understanding gives rise to compassion and love, which in turn gives rise to correct action. In order to love, it is first necessary to understand. So understanding is the key to liberation. In order to attain clear understanding, it is necessary to live mindfully, making direct contact with life in the present moment, truly seeing what is taking place within and outside of oneself. So how well do you understand those that are close to you, those that you love? To me, the second quote speaks to what we've called engaged Buddhism, where we interact with others so that we can understand them better, with the goal of helping or supporting them to reduce their suffering. So when we do that, we are considered bodhisattvas. And Siddhartha said, all beings contain within themselves the seeds of enlightenment. and yet we drown in the ocean of birth and death for so many thousands of lifetimes. Siddhartha knew he had found the great way. I think we could also call it the ocean of ignorance, or the ocean of suffering. And another interpretation may be that because we think we only have this life, we want to prolong and enjoy it as much as possible. Yet what is really important is how we help others and what we leave behind for future generations through our thoughts, words, and our actions. So he promised to find a way to share his discovery to help all others liberate themselves from suffering. Out of his deep insight emerged a profound love for all beings. So this is where Siddhartha makes the vow to become a bodhisattva. So Siddhartha teaches mindfulness. In chapter 19, entitled Tangerine of Mindfulness, Siddhartha, who found the Great Way the night before, teaches the children of the nearby village about mindfulness. So the children actually bring a basket of tangerines, and he asks each child to take a tangerine and peel it, and then eat it with awareness. And he asks the question about eating it with or without awareness. So what does it mean to eat a tangerine in awareness, and what does it mean to eat a tangerine without awareness? And what he says is that eating the tangerine in mindfulness means that while eating the tangerine, you are truly in touch with it. Your mind is not chasing after thoughts of yesterday or tomorrow, but is dwelling fully in the present moment. So looking at a tangerine, a person who practices awareness can see all the wonders of the universe contained in that tangerine, and how all things interact with one another. So we've actually had an exercise. I've done it with they have a children's sangha at the Jhana Buddhist Church, at least when we had the in-person sessions, and we would have a practice of bringing out a bowl of tangerines and eating it mindfully. So the path I have found is the path of living each hour of the day in awareness, mind and body always dwelling in the present moment. The opposite is to live in forgetfulness. If we live in forgetfulness, we do not know that we are alive. We do not experience life because our mind and body are not dwelling in the here and now. So why do we want to live in awareness and mindfulness? Well, why wouldn't we want to do that? So a person who lives in awareness knows what she is thinking, saying, and doing. Such a person can avoid thoughts, words, and actions that cause suffering for herself and others. And one will be able to deeply understand oneself and one's surroundings. Understanding leads to tolerance and love. When all beings understand one another, they will accept and love one another. Then there will not be much suffering in the world. And this is where the Buddha, the path that he discovered, and even the tree that he attained enlightenment under, all received names from the children. And the Buddha agreed to all these names. So, respected teacher, could we call this path the path of awareness? He agreed, and they said to him, "You are the awakened one, the one who shows us how to live in awareness. Can we call you the awakened one?" Which was Buddha in this language called Magadhi. So they called him the Buddha. And they also named the tree of awakening, and called it the Bodhi tree. So I think a teaching here is that we can learn from children. And I think it's easier for children to learn and understand the Buddha's teachings because they don't have as much to unlearn as adults do. So something to think about. And finally, this is my last slide. The Buddha begins to build his sangha. So from this point onwards, he starts to actually the first thing he does is he seeks out the five ascetics who are actually practicing with him prior to his attaining enlightenment, and they become his first bhikkhus. Bhikkhus are basically people that follow his teachings. And the word of the Buddha and his teachings start to spread, and there were like hundreds of people, and it soon became 1,000 people that actually joined, asked to be ordained by him into his sangha. And that's basically throughout, I think, chapter 19. It just tells a story of how his teachings started to spread and how people wanted to join, including women. So they were ordained into his order. And that's it.